Welcome to the Teaching Bites podcast. Here are your hosts, Fred and Sharon Jaravada.
Welcome to the Teaching Bites show, where we connect you with people and ideas to take your teaching to the next level. My name is Sharon Jaravada, and here today we have Eliza G. All right, Eliza, I've known her for like at least 15 years, and we go way back to SF State.
2001?
2001, yeah, and we met in the credential program. She's been a great resource ever since then. We've been great friends. She helped me move into this classroom we're sitting in right now. And every time I need anything, Eliza's there to help with professional and personal, anything. So she's taught everything from first to third to fifth. And she's been involved in the Bay Area Writers Project. She's been a BITSA mentor. She's also worked in summer school for 2 years, and she's also right now our PE coach in our school. So Eliza, I know that's not everything about you, but can you just give us a quick introduction about yourself? You know, what brought you to teaching, all your story about you. So, yeah.
So I'm a native San Franciscan, born and raised, and went through the education system here in San Francisco. I'm actually a product of San Francisco Unified. And what brought me here was having teachers as a young age at elementary school believe in me and really wanting me to push me more. I grew up in a Chinese environment where I spoke Cantonese at home, so it was easy for people to just say, oh, she's an ESL student and whatnot. So growing up, I always had an experience where I had, like, starting from my third grade on, teachers who always were like, you know, you do have the language, and we do believe in you. We want you to soar even higher. So what brought me here today in teaching is the fact that I have had past history of teachers who really believed in me and who really want to, like, push me to do even more, because it was so easy to just say, yeah, I'm a special ed. I mean, I'm a student who needs help with language, but in reality, it was like, no, you got it. You can't. We're not going to give up on you, and we're going to make you succeed. So having the people who pushed me and believing in me was kind of why I got into teaching, because I felt like, you know, I had teachers believe in me back then, and we need the generation coming up to have the same experience.
Wow, you know what? I've never known that story. I've known you forever. Well, that's amazing. So then you went to state, right, for your undergrad?
Yes.
Yeah. And then I met you in the credential program. And then after that, you went to student teaching, right? And then you worked at, tell us what grades you worked in and your experiences there.
So when I got out of the credential program, the first grade I actually substituted in the system first in the school districts. And I randomly decided, you know, I'm going to try these Chinatown schools because I don't know anything about them. I grew up in a middle income environment here in San Francisco. And so I decided randomly to choose working in Chinatown. And I picked up a substitute job at one of the schools in San Francisco, Chinatown. And from that day on, I actually had been working there from that job. The principal found out that I was a credentialed teacher and said to me, you know, we have a position opening. Are you interested in taking this position? So I decided, you know what? I need a job. So basically, she hired me as a part-time literacy specialist for half a year from January to
I remember that.
June. And basically, once the summer was about to begin, she says, I have a first grade opening for you. I like the way you interact with the students. You are a great representation of who they are, because I myself is Chinese American, so they see themselves.
Yeah.
So they asked the principal at that time asked me, "Are you interested in a first grade position?" I wanted a job. I needed to make money. So I pretty much took on that first grade experience. Was there for 6 years. Really enjoyed it, but I got to the point where I knew I needed a change. I knew that I couldn't stay in first grade forever in terms of my own professional growth. I was getting tired of teaching phonics. I was getting tired of teaching the same old reading program.
Matt, sad. I remember you telling me that.
Yes, I got tired of that, and I needed a new change, and an opportunity arose where fifth grade opening came up. So then principal asked me, "Are you, I'm going to move you to fifth grade." So went on to fifth grade. Really enjoyed it there. Totally different experience than having to teach the foundational learning experiences that the students needed. So went to fifth grade, taught there for 3 years, then enjoyed it. But then something the school had some changes in programming. So as a result, I moved down to third grade. I moved down, and I taught third grade for 3 years, and I really enjoyed it there also. So in between, first, fifth, and then third, it was always a different experience because the students were different. Like some of the students really wanted to impress the teachers. So they really were kind of doing what they can versus some students just really needed a mentor to see someone's like, they need that little kick to get them motivated. So in a way, even though I did move around grades, it was really good for me professionally because I wasn't in a rut. I always had to learn what to teach the students, like how language arts was, how math was, science, social studies. Like I had to learn the curriculum all over again. So I got excited. And once you get excited, the kids get excited. So it was a benefit for the students that I was learning as well as they were learning. So it was good. I mean, my teaching, and then right now, currently, I've been with the San Francisco Unified with their PE program, with elementary, teaching PE for just my second year, and it's a different experience. It's challenging me to learn the K-5 curriculum, but I'm not in a rut. I'm able to continue to move on, and I'm able to continually learn, and not just not make every day a mundane day.
Well, that's important because, we had an episode about teacher burnout in the beginning of our podcasts. And one of the things that we talked about was trying new things. So what motivated you to, besides not being in a rut, what motivated you to keep going, even though you had to learn all this new curriculum again? And even learning PE, it's a whole different thing.
I think what keeps me going is watching the students interested and really they have a passion for that learning. So once they have that passion, me as a teacher wants to make it even more. For example, I was 2 years ago, I was learning about the balanced literacy approach, and in a way, it was very hard because I was having to make up curriculum on my own and charts and whatnot. But then once I introduced it to students, it was like, oh, all my work was worth it. Like I could see their progress. I could see their improvement, and I could see them going, oh, I want to read more, or I want to do more. So I always feel like, the students are what drives me. They kind of make me want to be a better person, to be a better teacher for them. And how I come into the classroom or how I am with them during that day reflects upon them and how they are.
Good. So, you have a lot of experience with elementary kids, both in and out the classroom. What's the one thing that is always with you, no matter if you're teaching PE, you coach teachers in the Bay Area Writers Project, which we can talk more about later, and you've taught first, third through fifth, first, third, and fifth. So what's something that's that you hold on to that helps you with all those different settings?
I think what I always remember is impressions. What impression are you making on students or teachers or the people around you and parents and whatnot? I think about how students come back and visit. They are choosing to come back and visit you in a classroom. You may have think, oh my goodness, why are they coming back?
And what's their name again?
But, they're coming back to visit you, and they're making that choice. So you made a difference. You made an impression on that student. I remember vividly, this is what keeps me going. I was teaching fifth grade, and I had a student in my class. Her name is Gabby. And Gabby was not a typical student in the sense that she was driven to learn, and she knew she had some learning differences, but it wasn't diagnosed, but there were some learning differences. And I remember teaching this math algebraic expressions, 2 problem variables in 5th grade. And she would be like raising her hand, Miss G, I don't get it. I'm like, okay, I got to teach it for the 6th time. She would literally move her chair up to the board and was really determined to learn this algebraic, how to do, mixed variables. And she just was like, I don't get it. And I knew she was sincere about it. Like, I really, really, really knew she was sincere about it. That night, I get a text from her.
Really?
And her text was, I still don't get it.
So she's persisting through this.
She
amazing.
was. She was like, I'm really trying. Well, couple years have passed and stuff like that, and she would still come by and visit me at elementary school.
Yeah.
And she would be, I remembered her because her family was really great and awesome. And 8th grade came around, and she actually needed me to proofread a paper for her. And she was like, Miss G, would you proofread a paper?
Oh, what an honor.
And I was like, send it to me. If you are more than willing to reach out to me, then I will send a paper. I mean, I will proofread it and send it back to you.
Wow.
So there was one evening, we both were on Google Docs. We were starting a conversation, and I was helping her edit. She was trying to get into a program. So we both were editing the paper and whatnot. And next, she got into the program. Then I get an email from her, a couple weeks later saying, oh, I have a leadership graduation. Can you please attend? It's like things like that where you go, you cannot not attend. You have to go to it, So I think what drives me also is just the impressions you make on students. Like, students who are really reaching out to you, even after they're in your classroom, they still want to be able to connect with you and know that you are that connection for them.
Well, it seems like you made that relationship with that student really special, and it's beyond academics, right? Like, it's like she trusts you, and she knows that you'll be there for her, and that's such a great story to share.
I think that's what drives me. That's like I'm saying, like it's all about impressions, and what impression are you making on the students? And if you leave a positive impression or whatever impression you are leaving, that's what they remember you by.
Yeah, great. Okay, so I want to ask you. You may have already talked about this, but take us back to the aha moment where you knew, okay, teaching is for me. That's that moment that you're like, this is it.
My first year with getting my teaching evaluation, it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. We were doing descriptive writing. It was a kindergarten classroom. And so I had my students like touching something, and they had to write about, they had to tell me what words.
Is this student teaching?
No, this is actual full teaching, like my first year of teaching. And so then I just remember this, and then my principal came in and sat down and wanted to, do her observation on me.
Yeah.
And I had a student throw up.
Oh, no.
Full on throw up in the middle of my observation. I was like,
they don't stop those for the observation.
Yes, students don't know when to not throw up.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, okay. And I remember going, what words would you use to describe that? And then so the kids were like, okay, now you know what? We're going to go back to our desk now because I need to call the janitor to get this cleaned up. But, I just was thinking, oh, no, okay, this is going to be my last year teaching. The principal is never going to ask me for it back, whatnot.
Yeah.
But then for my post-observation, she was like, it was the way I conducted myself after,
Yes.
Here's the situation you knew. And it wasn't according to a lesson plan. It wasn't.
Can't plan that.
I didn't say a kid was going to throw up. But she said it was the way I handled the situation and how the students reacted to that situation. Like, they didn't say, ew, it's gross.
Yeah.
But then, they were respectful of the fact that this child wasn't feeling well. So at that point, I knew this is like, I'm in the right place. Like, this is for me. Like, I just knew I wanted to do this.
Yeah. I never heard that story either.
Sorry.
Okay. No, but that's cool. I think because the reason why the kids were so respectful was because the way you set the tone in your classroom. Mm-hmm. So that speaks that. And you have to be ready for anything in this job. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, the way you recovered from it, you could have totally taken a totally different direction. Like, oh my gosh, what happened? But okay, great. So, before you started teaching, what is one thing that you wish you'd known?
Before I started teaching, that teaching is so encompassing.
What do you mean by that?
That, like, during the 9 months that I am teaching, that it really takes on your life in terms of, it's not a 8:40 to 2:40 job, it's not that once the kids are gone doesn't mean that your life as a teacher stops, but you yourself are really dedicated to the kids. I mean, I'm thinking about, like, how even though on weekends you have the weekends, but sometimes you have those parents or those kids who invite you to a birthday party or a gathering, and or a school function, and that you just need to make an hour appearance. You need to make that appearance there. So I guess I wish I would have known that before I started teaching. Or my other one is how much organization how organized one needs to be.
Yes.
Because there's so much paperwork that goes between you and either your students or other professionals. Like, there's so much paperwork that you need to really organize where things go. Like, I had to reorganize, like, even my folders in my email, because I had to have a curriculum folder, curriculum math, curriculum language arts, curriculum social studies. But I had to have, like, different folders just so that I know if I need it, how to easily access it.
Good. How else do you organize? Do you have any tips for other people? Like, what would be something that would be a organization tip?
As a classroom teacher, I put everything into binders. I had everything, even when I buy like the teacher resource books, I actually take them apart and I put them into binders.
Oh, that's a good idea.
All my binders are the same color. I used white binders, and the only way it was differentiated was that the tabs were by subject area. So, like, my language arts was written on had black font. My math was on blue font. But that has helped me a lot, so that, say, for instance, you're planning for a sub, I need to get math. It's like, okay, I have my binders behind my desk. I pull out resource and whatnot. So that has saved me a lot in terms of staying organized, because, as a teacher, as a new teacher especially, you buy all these reference books, Scholastic.
Oh, I have a lot of those.
But where do they're not, you really think about it, they're not friendly on a bookcase because there's so many of them. Mm-hmm. So I've learned to just take away the binding and hole punch it and just put it into a binder.
That's a good idea, because then when you Xerox it, you just run it through versus pushing it down on one side. Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. I think I might have to do that.
You just have to invest in white binder. Well, for me, it was white binders because I like
the
matching.
Clean look. Yeah.
I like matching.
I like that too.
I motivate my students by using it myself.
Okay.
For instance, my school that I was working at, they didn't have smart boards. But it didn't stop me from not having a smart board, because I used my iPad as a smart board and was able to basically have all the functions of a smart board, but using a using a projector, I was able to use my iPad as a smart board and save everything like that.
Yeah, that's what I do. It's so awesome.
Well, the other one I
Yeah.
did was like when we're writing out answers on, like we were answering questions and whatnot, I would type it out so the kids could read it. But I use a wireless keyboard so that the kids are typing out the answers.
Oh,
from their
like
desk.
live.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
At their desk.
Uh-huh.
Because, you just use a wireless keyboard and it doesn't matter where the student is as long as they're within vicinity. But then the kid's the one who's writing in the answers. So my other one was for writing, I used a closed wiki site. And when I did that, actually my students were motivated to go home and write because they... I always tell parents, I said, why don't you just sit there and watch them? Why don't you just sit there and see what they're doing? And then parents come back to me and say, they're writing. I go, well, what would you want them to do?
Yeah.
I could tell you exactly what they're doing. I know because, I have a date stamp and a time stamp and whatnot. But for students, it was more like I'm validating the fact that they can use the computer. I'm validating their ideas and being able to say, because most parents will go, oh, I don't want them to use the computer because they're on too much.
They're playing or something. But, it depends on what they're doing with it. Are you creating something or are you just playing some mindless game?
Well, I also tell parents, you're the one who's providing the computer. Are you not monitoring them? Why aren't you monitoring what they're doing? And you're the one who's allowing them. I always tell parents, you don't put a computer in their bedroom. You don't put a computer in the student's bedroom. You put it outside in the living room where it's communal and whatnot. Right. And I have to honestly say, once I had students writing, then the parents were a little more into letting the child use the computer more. And I was kind of like saying that's what we're using it for. And they want to be beyond more. They want to be able to use it more. And
yeah.
But the same thing for, motivating my students. They think once they know that you are trying to learn what they're learning, then it makes a difference. It makes a total, even right now, back then, a lot of students were into Minecraft.
Right.
And, if you integrate Minecraft into something, a geometry problem, whatnot, then next thing you know, some students were like, oh, you know what Minecraft is? Like, yeah, I know what Minecraft is, don't you?
I have my persuasive writing project. That's one of the hardest to teach, right, and write. And some kids are like, I want to talk about basketball. Cool. Like, they're talking about how Stephen Curry is the best player in the NBA. Do it. I don't care what topic you do. If you're motivated by it, do it. But I want to go back to the wiki, closed wiki site. Can you explain that to our audience? They might not know what that is.
A closed wiki site is, there's cloud computing, which means that it doesn't matter what platform you use, whether you use a Mac or a PC, it doesn't matter. And so a wiki site is just a website that allows the students to go online and to write, basically. Or you could, for my students were able to even put, when they did their animal reports, they did their animal reports on there. They did the slideshows on there. It was a closed site. A closed site means that they have a login and a password.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the only people who were allowed onto the site were people that I authorized, as well as my students.
So speaking of resources and ideas, you work for the Bay Area Writing Project, and I'd like you to talk more about what that is, your involvement in it, and all that.
So the Bay Area Writing Project is actually from the National Writing Project, which actually started here in Berkeley, California. Mm-hmm. And so I am a teacher consultant for the Bay Area Writing Project, which means I've got exclusively and intensively trained with their summer institute, and I think I was at 2006 or 2008. And basically, it's to really improve your pedagogy in writing with students, and as well as yourself, because they believe that you yourself have to be you need to be a writer if you're going to teach writing, and go from there.
Yeah.
So, what happens for me? What goes on with the Bay Area Writing Project is they offer Saturday workshops. They offer workshops either, seasonally or random workshops throughout the school year and whatnot. So I've attended a couple, and it kind of is encouraging when you are, in a small group of like 10 to 12 professionals who kind of want to like improve upon a genre or studies.
And they're
of
also
writing.
teachers too, right?
Yes, they're all
Okay.
teachers, and so you get to go. Even talking to a high school teacher or a middle school teacher, I get ideas from them. He's like, okay, I can simplify it for an elementary student and go from there. So I use their resources for ideas to help me out and to attend, resource fairs, to get ideas and just to stay up to date with what's going on, because they also give me an idea of, try this. Because for myself, during the summers, I was also teaching their young writers camp here in the city. And they, it's a different idea when you're teaching with different students. It's a different, just different. And so when you're teaching different students, you kind of go, oh, let me try this with them. And you're teaching with a teacher partner, and they give you ideas too. So in a way, it's kind of for myself, it's a resource that I liked also using to reach out and be like, hey, I'm having a hard time here. You guys have any ideas how you can help me out here?
Yeah, I mean, I imagine if you talk to a middle school, high school teacher, you can see the whole spectrum of what students should be able to do, right?
And sometimes they go, well, why aren't they getting what a sentence is? And, they don't know use punctuation, or, they don't know how to do this. It's like, well, sorry. We try our best.
It's always our fault. That's why.
Yes.
I always wish there was some kind of like bridge between elementary to middle to high school. Even if it's just one school, like we have that up just down the street, like just connect. That'd be so powerful to just have discussions about what it looks like, All right, so what motivates you to get through your day? I mean, sometimes we're like so tired, or like this kid's driving me nuts, or, I have so much to do. What keeps you going?
So in the PE department, we call it the superstar effect. Because right now, being a PE teacher, you are the kid's best friend, because they know when they come out to you, they get to play.
Yeah.
They get to be out and, they get to run, they get to jump, they get to throw balls. They get to have fun, and that's, most kids want to go out there and play, and they want to be able to have fun and go there. So what motivates me to get through my day is knowing that, you're making a difference in their physical fitness. You're making a difference in them moving and them, being aware of their body and really learning a skill, a fitness skill, and going from there. So, I see students who, they throw better, or they kick better, or they do something better. And it's because they've had that practice. They get to play. I mean, here at your school, Sharon, one of the advantages that your kids have is they have a very big play yard.
Bigger than our old Chinatown schools, remember?
Yes, but they have a very,
they
have a
do.
very, and considering that most of these are, city kids who may not go to the park very often, but, here's, pretty much a city block that the school is on. And they get to play. I mean, they get to really doing a play. So, they look forward to being able to be the only classroom that's out there, and, they get to have a football game, or they get to throw a ball. They get to throw a football really far. So I guess, what motivates to get through a day is knowing that I bring happiness to a kid for just 35 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And for us, in my position right now, it's like, to really encourage them to do better. It's like, can we throw a little further? Can we do something a little better? But they know that, I'm not correcting their grammar. I'm not correcting their math. I'm not doing that stuff. Though, I use math in counting, and they don't realize that, they're counting by twos to 160, or, they're not really noticing that. But then they know that they're being active, and they get to play, and it's okay that they kind of goof off because I want them to.
Right. And the fact that you used to be a classroom teacher has definitely, I can totally see how you teach. You use those elements in there, like you said, the counting and the math and the management you use, and it just makes it so much better.
Well,
you
and
know,
the
it makes
students
it just
respect you.
easy. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Do you have a ta-da moment where you're like, yeah, this is a cool thing I've done, like you're really proud of it? Can you think of something that you've done in your career?
I think what I am most proud of right now is my last 2 years in third grade. I took my students camping in the Presidio, and it was hard on me in planning because all the logistical aspect of the paperwork of overnight, the food, what they're going to be doing for the 12 hours that they're with you, and worried that a kid's can get homesick and whatnot. But then at the end of my first year doing the camping trip, it was the best experience because they had a lot of things made sense to them. For instance, it was the clearest night that one evening, and my students saw the moon go from the east to the west.
Oh, awesome.
So instead of reading about it, they actually saw, and it was a full moon that night, they actually saw the moon, and they were like, you weren't lying. It's like, no, I wasn't.
I don't make this stuff up, kids.
Yeah. Or the other one was that they saw the dippers. They saw the constellations in the sky, and they just didn't read about it, but they saw it. They saw the night sky. I mean, we also did a program with the Golden Gate National Rec where they learned about the Ohlone Native Americans. So they were like, oh, this is really cool because now we get to see, their playing tools or, things like that. In the Presidio, there's also a point called Immigration Point, and we were there, and most of my Chinese students, we talked about what does it mean to be an immigrant? How do you think it felt? And a lot of them were like, it probably is very scary and whatnot. So it's like they have empathy. They started having empathy for their parents or their grandparents who came over here. So it was, and I just remember, I did not sleep that night because I was worried about my students and whatnot.
You were exhausted.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm.
And, but then that moment, that was our end of the year. Like, we are done with third grade. Mm-hmm. But I was proud of that moment because the kids came together. Like, they worked together. They made their tents. They all had jobs. I mean, I had all my students washing dishes at one point in time, and my students' parents were like, "They never wash dishes
at home."
Or I had fathers making pancakes, and they've never made pancakes in their life. And I told the parents these were the best pancakes, even though they were kind of runny. Yeah. It didn't matter, the parents. It didn't matter to them. So I was really proud of that moment because I saw the accumulation of everything that was happening. Like the students grew up, and what they were learning academically, they were applying it. And I was just really proud of them. I was like, it was totally worth it. I would definitely do it again, which I did. But, I would really just, that was an experience where it was totally worth it for me.
Yeah. Great. Awesome. What are you really excited about right now? Like a project, a trip, or maybe a professional development, or a book you're reading, or something?
One thing that I left when I was my last year teaching was really how to integrate the different curriculums together. I was able to really integrate science and language arts together, but I would like to do it a little more in terms of making it well-rounded for the students. What I meant when I say that I integrated language arts and science together is, like, for instance, when my students had a writing project, they had monthly writing projects. And sometimes it wasn't based upon what
the spiral.
Yeah. It would depend on the spiral, but it really depended on what was going on in the classroom, and we really trying to tweak it for them. So, like, for instance, I had one writing assignment where it was my kindergarten niece, so they have an audience, they know it's a kindergarten, said that light is when you open and close your eyes, and color is what makes things beautiful. So, my students had to, one, write a letter to my kindergarten niece, so they had to know that you're talking to a kindergartner. And then basically the assignment was for them to explain what light and color is to a kindergartner.
So they have to do it in a way that's really explicit.
Yes. Yeah. And you can't just throw words at, you can't just throw words at her because she's a kindergartner. Like some of the students were like, oh, well, it's reflection, and what's being absorbed is what color is. Like, okay, she's a kindergartner.
Yeah.
How do you explain a kindergartner?
Right.
So then they had to go, okay, absorption is when something soaks something up. It's like, that's what I want as a teacher. I want you to be able to explain what these words are and whatnot. So, and I was able to really integrate science with language arts that way, especially with writing. So that instead of them taking a test at the end of a science unit, they can explain something to me, explain how something works, and give them an audience and whatnot.
Yeah.
I would like to do that with more, because I know especially with the math, the students have to do more writing. So how can you integrate maybe a descriptive writing in math? If they're doing a geometry question, but how can they write it out versus...
Yeah, what do you do?
Yeah, exactly. So for me, my project that I'm giving myself is, if I'm back in the classroom, is how can I integrate more subjects together instead of teaching them in isolation, but intertwine them so that it's easier for the students, and also it's more purposeful, it's more meaningful, so that you're not just teaching language arts during language arts blocks, but you can integrate it with during math time or during science or social studies time, but there's also another time that it could happen.
Yeah, cool. All right. Do you have a time-saving tip? I know you talked about organization, but is there something that helps you save time in your day, whether it's in your other jobs as a classroom teacher or right now as a PE coach? I
try not living at the photocopy machine. I lived at the photocopy machine at the beginning of the year or at the end of the year. So what I'm talking about is I will, at the end of the year, I will run off copies for the next year.
Yeah.
And I actually will bind them. So for instance, I made math supplemental word problem books for my students. And instead of giving them loose leaf papers, I actually bound the books so that I'll tell the students, okay, we're doing, worksheet number 1 today. We're doing worksheet number 2, but it's all bound together. So the students already know that.
Yeah.
And same thing goes for I had a grammar supplemental book that I needed my students to use so that we still work on grammar. And instead of giving them daily worksheets or, worksheets to work off of, it was already in a bound book.
So that's cool. And they can't lose it.
Yeah, they lose it, they lose the whole thing.
They lose
the whole thing. So, and I found that really helped me, my sanity, because I didn't have to go, oh man, I didn't photocopy page 6. I didn't photocopy. Yeah. I did it all the previous year. And then I have my that year's students buying the books for next year's students. So it's like a domino effect.
Right.
Where, these books were made by last year's students, so you got to make the books for next year's students.
Yeah.
So I found that helpful.
That's a good idea.
Because then, you never know when the photocopy machine will not work that day. So I already had, all that I needed photocopied by the year before.
And that's kind of cool. In case you happen to be out, a substitute, did that save you sometimes?
Yes.
You just go to this book.
Yeah.
This page.
And I color coded everything just so that I could say,
nice.
For me, language arts was all one color, math was all one color, so the students already knew, okay, this is what the color is, this is, what's going on. So it was easier for them too, especially with students who get confused easily. Yeah. They can remember, math is blue, so it's the blue books. Just bring out everything that's blue.
Yeah. The no excuse.
Yes.
All right. So, what's the best advice you've ever received? And what is the best advice for other teachers?
So my master teacher when I was student teaching gave me this advice. We got out of school at 1:50.
Okay. Early start.
We were early start school, and he said to me, "If you are not productive after 3:30, it's time to go home." So I've taken that to so I've been at schools where they end at 2:40. So if I am not productive, that means if I'm just socializing or if I'm just dilly-dallying, if I'm just surfing the web at 4:00, it's time to go home. I don't need to, if I'm just, kicking it with the teacher and going, hey, how's it going? And whatnot. And it's 4:00, it's time to go. But if I'm like really working or if I'm really planning for the next day or whatnot, then okay, I'll stay a little longer. But I don't, he's also said, you stay an hour after and then you go. You don't, so I never tried on Fridays I would stay a little longer, but Monday to Thursday I wouldn't stay past 5. I would leave at 5. Sometimes I'll leave at 4, if I didn't. But that's the advice I always had was that I always give to teachers is like, the work will always be there, but if you're not productive at a certain time, it's time to go home. I mean, you need a
have a life.
Yeah, it's you don't have to go home, but you just need to get out of work. You need to get out of the school, and you need to, either go grocery shopping,
or take care of yourself, work out or something,
do
see your friends.
Exactly, but I mean, why do you need to just dilly dally at work? Why do you need? You're just killing time, and you're gonna go home later and later. Go, why was I at work that late? Why was I late? So I think my advice would be, if you're not productive after a certain time, give yourself an hour after school ends. It's time to leave.
Yeah.
It's time to leave.
Definitely. And then how about, what's your advice for other teachers?
Teachers.
What would you give, what advice would you give other teachers? Since you've received advice, but what, on the other hand, what advice would you give to other teachers?
To know what your limits are, to know, for my example, like I've jumped around in grades and it's actually helped me professionally. To not be afraid to make that leap, to not be afraid to try something new or to be able to just try something, like if your students aren't understanding something, maybe taking a step back and understanding what's going on here. Why aren't they? Not just why aren't they getting it, but what are you doing wrong?
Yeah.
To really be receptive of change. I know some teachers they don't want change. They're very stuck on like their schedule or they're really stuck on teaching a certain way. But is that the best way? That may be the best way for last year's students, but is that the best way for this year's students?
Right.
Because every student comes with, their own needs and their own ways of learning. So, being flexible, really being able to kind of understand that, your teaching is not stagnant and your teaching is not just one way or that's it, but really kind of reaching out and kind of seeing what's out there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Eliza, do you have any the contact information that you can leave for people want to get in touch with you, like a website or something, or an email address? Well, if they want to ask you advice for something,
if people are interested in contacting me, I guess my best way is through my email address, which is Eliza GELIZAGEE@gmail.com.
Okay, and I'll put that in the show notes so you guys can contact her. All right, Eliza, thank you so much for your time. This has been nice hanging out with you and just chatting like usual. And everyone, please find us on teachingbites.com, and I'll talk to you later. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Teaching Bites podcast at www.teachingbites.com.